The auction hall buzzed with voices from dozens of different species. Hana Kim stood on her toes, trying to see over the crowd of tall aliens gathered around the display screens. Her small hands clutched a data pad that showed her savings. 347 credits. Not much, but it was everything she had earned over the past year working in her uncle's salvage shop. She was 12 years old, short for her age, with dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Her clothes were clean but worn, patched in several places. Most people at Orbital Station Harmony 7 knew her as Taeyang Kim's niece, the quiet girl who sorted scrap metal and rarely smiled. What they didn't know was that she spent every free moment studying star charts and ship designs, dreaming of the day she could follow in her parents' footsteps. 3 years had passed since her parents disappeared. They were explorers, always chasing rumors of ancient civilizations and forgotten worlds. The last transmission came from somewhere in the void sector, a region of space so dangerous that most captains refused to go there. After 6 months of silence, they were declared lost. Hana came to live with her uncle on the station, but she never stopped believing she would find answers someday. The auctioneer, a large insect-like alien with 4 arms, waved at the crowd. Lot 73, mixed salvage from the Kelros debris field, starting bid, 50 credits. Hana checked her pad. This was the lot she wanted. Nobody else seemed interested. Most salvagers ignored mixed lots because they usually contained worthless junk. But Hana had learned to read between the lines of auction descriptions. Mixed salvage often meant they didn't know what they had. 50 credits, she called out, her voice barely audible above the noise. The auctioneer's multiple eyes swiveled toward her. 50 from the small human. Any advance on 50? The crowd ignored her. A mixed lot wasn't worth their time. Sold to the young human for 50 credits. Hana's heart pounded as she transferred the credits. She had gambled most of her savings on a hunch. If she was wrong, Uncle Taeyong would be disappointed, but not surprised. He always said she had inherited her parents' reckless curiosity. 2 hours later, a cargo drone delivered her purchase to the shop's loading bay. Uncle Taeyang looked up from the engine parts he was cataloging. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too much loss. "What did you buy this time?" he asked. "Just some scrap," Hana said, trying to sound casual. The cargo containers opened with a hiss. Most of it was exactly what she expected: broken hull plates, burned wiring, shattered view screens. But beneath the obvious garbage partially hidden under a torn cargo net, she saw it. A ship, or what was left of one. It was small, about the size of a fighter craft, but the design was like nothing she had ever seen. The hull was dark, almost black, with a surface that seemed to absorb light. Even covered in carbon scoring and impact damage, it had a strange elegance. The wings were swept back at an unusual angle, and the nose cone was narrow and pointed like a blade. "What is that?" Uncle Taeyang moved closer. His professional interest awakened. "I don't know," Hana admitted. She ran her hand along the hull. The metal felt smooth and warm, almost alive. "Have you ever seen this kind of alloy?" Her uncle pulled out his scanner and ran it over the surface. He frowned at the readings. "That's odd. The scanner can't identify the material. It's not in any database I have access to." They spent the rest of the day clearing space in the workshop and moving the fighter onto a repair platform. Hana barely stopped to eat. She photographed every detail, took measurements, and tried to identify the markings etched into various panels. The symbols were elegant and flowing, completely unlike the blocky text of human languages or the geometric patterns of most alien scripts. They seemed to shift slightly when she looked at them from different angles, though she knew that was probably just her tired eyes playing tricks. "You should get some sleep," Uncle Taeyong said as the station's night cycle began. "That ship isn't going anywhere." But Hana couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the fighter. Something about it felt important, though she couldn't explain why. Finally, she gave up on rest and returned to the workshop. The fighter sat in the dim emergency lighting, casting strange shadows on the walls. Hana climbed into the cockpit, which was surprisingly intact despite the external damage. The seat was too large for her, designed for someone taller. The control panels were dark and dead, covered in a thin layer of corrosion. She pulled out a cleaning cloth and began wiping away the buildup. As she worked, she noticed that one panel had more symbols than the others. They were arranged in a circle around what looked like a palm print. Without thinking, she placed her hand on it. The panel glowed. Hana jerked back, but the glow didn't fade. Instead, it spread through lines in the control panel she hadn't noticed before, racing across the cockpit like liquid light. The air above the console shimmered, and suddenly a hologram appeared. It showed a figure, tall and humanoid, but clearly not human. The image flickered and broke apart every few seconds, corrupted by time and damage. The figure spoke in a language Hana had never heard, musical and complex. Behind the figure, star charts appeared and disappeared, showing systems she didn't recognize. The message played for 30 seconds before cutting off abruptly. The cockpit went dark again, but Hana's heart was racing. She scrambled out of the fighter and ran to wake her uncle. "Uncle! Uncle Taeyang!" He appeared in the doorway, half asleep and alarmed. "What's wrong?" "The ship! It turned on! There's a message!" They returned to the workshop together. Hana showed him what she had done, placing her hand on the panel again. This time, nothing happened. "It was working," she insisted. "I saw someone and star charts, and—" "I believe you," Uncle Taeyang said quietly. He was staring at the fighter with an expression Hana couldn't read. "Hana, do you still have your mother's research notes?" "Yes. Why?" "Get them. I want to compare something." Hana ran to her room and returned with a worn data pad that had belonged to her mother. Uncle Taeyang took it and scrolled through the files until he found what he was looking for. He held it up next to the symbols on the fighter's hull. They were identical. "Your parents," Uncle Taeyang said slowly, "were researching something called the Architects, a civilization that was supposed to have existed millions of years ago. Most scientists think they're just a myth. But this ship might be proof they were real." He looked at Hana with concern. "If that's true, a lot of people will want it. Dangerous people." Hana looked at the fighter, then at her mother's notes, then back at her uncle. "I don't care. This is why they disappeared, isn't it? They found something about the Architects, and they went looking for more." Uncle Taeyang sighed. He knew that stubborn look in her eyes. It was the same look her mother had whenever she was about to do something reckless. "Then we need to be very careful," he said, "and we're going to need help." Dae-hyun Park was 17 and already one of the best mechanics on Orbital Station Harmony 7. He worked in the main repair docks, fixing everything from small shuttles to massive cargo haulers. He was tall and thin, with oil-stained hands and a quick smile that made him popular with the dock workers. When Hana approached him during his lunch break, he was eating noodles and watching a repair manual on his data pad. "I need your help," she said without introduction. Dae-hyun looked up, recognizing Taeyang's niece. "With what?" "I found a ship, a really old one. I need someone who can help me get it working." "How old?" "Maybe millions of years old." Dae-hyun laughed, then stopped when he saw she was serious. "That's impossible. No technology lasts that long." "Come see it first, then tell me what's impossible." An hour later, Dae-hyun stood in the workshop, staring at the fighter with his mouth open. He had circled it 3 times, running his scanner over every surface. The readings made no sense. "This power source," he said, pointing at a strange, circular device visible through a damaged panel. It's not fusion. It's not antimatter. I don't know what it is, but it's still generating energy after who knows how long. Can you fix the propulsion system? Hana asked. I can try. But Hana, if this ship is really what you think it is, you should report it to station authorities. This is beyond salvage laws. This is archaeological discovery. No. Her voice was firm. Station authorities will take it away. I need to understand it first. Dae-hyun saw the determination in her eyes and sighed. All right, but I'm going to need parts and probably help from someone who understands ancient languages. That was how they met Minji Cho. Minji was a Venteran, an alien species that looked somewhat like a cross between a human and a bird. She had golden feathers instead of hair and large, intelligent eyes. She ran a small translation service in the station's cultural district, helping aliens and humans communicate with each other. When Hana showed her images of the symbols, Minji's feathers stood up in excitement. Where did you find these? She demanded. On a ship. Can you translate them? Minji studied the images for a long time. These symbols. I've seen something similar in very old texts. They're supposed to belong to the architects. That's what my uncle said. Who were they? According to legend, the architects were the first civilization to travel between stars. They appeared millions of years ago, explored the galaxy, and then vanished without explanation. Most scholars think they never existed. They're just stories that different species tell. But what if they were real? Minji looked at Hana carefully. If they were real, and you found one of their ships, then you're sitting on the most important discovery in galactic history. You're also in serious danger. Over the next 2 weeks, the three of them worked on the fighter in secret. Dae-hyun slowly restored the propulsion system, learning as he went. The technology was so advanced that he could barely understand how it worked. Minji spent hours studying the symbols, comparing them to ancient texts from dozens of different worlds, and Hana tried again and again to activate the holographic message. On the 15th day, something changed. Dae-hyun had just finished installing a new power coupling when the entire ship hummed to life. Lights flickered on across the control panel. The hologram appeared again, clearer this time. The figure in the message was tall and slender, with features that were almost human but not quite. It spoke in that musical language, and this time the message lasted longer. Star charts appeared, showing a clear route through space. One location was marked with a pulsing symbol. Can you translate this? Hana asked Minji. The Venteran had been recording everything. She played back the audio and ran it through her translation software. It's difficult. The language is very old, and my database has only fragments, but I can make out some phrases. Preserve the light. They are returning. And this part here? I think it says the final shelter, or maybe the last vault. What about those coordinates? Dae-hyun asked, pointing at the star chart. Minji compared them to modern navigation charts. Her feathers went flat against her head, a sign of fear in her species. What is it? Hana demanded. Those coordinates are in the void sector. The void sector, where Hana's parents had disappeared. Before they could discuss it further, Uncle Taiyang burst into the workshop. We have a problem. Station security is coming. Someone reported unusual energy readings from this bay. They quickly shut down the fighter, but it was too late. 5 security officers arrived 10 minutes later, led by a stern woman with a scanner. We've received reports of unauthorized activation of unknown technology, she said. I'm going to need to see what you're working on. Uncle Taiyang tried to block her way. This is private salvage. You have no right. We have every right when it comes to potentially dangerous technology. The officer pushed past him and stopped when she saw the fighter. What is that? Old scrap, Hana said quickly. We're just seeing if we can get it working. The officer scanned the ship and frowned at the readings. This needs to come to the station's research facility for proper analysis. No! Hana stepped in front of the fighter. I bought this legally. It's mine. Not anymore, kid. This is clearly of xenoarchaeological significance. It belongs in a proper facility. That night, Hana couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the fighter being taken away, locked in some government lab where she would never see it again. She thought about her parents and the coordinates in the void sector. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on her door. She opened it to find Captain Ji-Ho Song standing there. Ji-Ho was an old friend of her parents, a freight captain who had known them for years. He was middle-aged with gray in his hair and a weathered face that had seen every corner of human space. "Your uncle called me," he said. "He thinks you might try to do something stupid. I need to get the fighter back. I know. That's why I'm here." Ji-Ho smiled slightly. "Your mother once helped me out of a very bad situation. I owe her family a debt. There's a cargo bay on the lower levels that station security doesn't monitor very carefully. If someone were to move a certain ship there tonight, I might be able to smuggle it off the station." "Really?" "Really. But Hana, you need to understand something. If this ship is what I think it is, a lot of people will want it. Corporations, governments, maybe worse. Once you take it, there's no going back." Hana thought about her parents, about the message, about the coordinates pointing to where they had disappeared. "I understand," she said. They moved the fighter that night with Dae-hyun's help. It was risky and difficult, but they managed to get it to the hidden bay without being spotted. Once it was secured, Ji-Ho locked the doors. "Now what?" Dae-hyun asked. "Now we wait for the right moment to leave," Ji-Ho said. "Station security will be looking for this ship, but they'll assume it was stolen by professional thieves, not a 12-year-old girl." But the next morning brought new trouble. A message appeared on every public screen in the station. It showed the fighter and offered a reward for information, 100,000 credits. The message came from Nexus Corporation, one of the largest weapons manufacturers in human space. "They want the technology," Uncle Taeyang said grimly. "They must have spies in station security who saw the scans." "What do we do?" Hana asked. Minji, who had stayed the night in the workshop, spoke up. "We follow the coordinates. That message was a warning and a guide. The architects left something behind and your parents were trying to find it." "The void sector is suicide," Dae-hyun protested. "Ships that go there don't come back." "My parents went there," Hana said quietly, "and this ship can take us there safely. I know it can." Uncle Taeyang looked at her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Then you'll need a crew, a real one." "I'll go," Dae-hyun said immediately. "And I," Minji added. Ji-Ho grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that. My ship leaves in 3 days. That gives us time to gather supplies and a few more people I trust." Hana felt something warm spread through her chest. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a team, and together they were going to find out what happened to her parents. She was going to discover what the architects had left behind. Captain Ji-Ho's freight ship was called the Morning Star. It was old and battered, with patches on its hull and engines that wheezed when they started. But Ji-Ho kept it running through sheer stubbornness and skill. The ship could carry cargo or passengers, and it had enough weapons to discourage pirates. 3 new people joined them before departure. Hye-jin Lee was a navigator who had worked with Hana's parents years ago. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and steady hands. She knew the dangerous routes better than anyone. Kyung-min Bai was a scientist who studied ancient civilizations. He was quiet and thoughtful, with a collection of books on lost cultures from across the galaxy. When Minji showed him the symbols from the fighter, his hands shook with excitement. The third was Soo-hyuk Choi, Dae-hyun's older brother. He worked as a security specialist and insisted on coming along to protect his younger brother. He was bigger than Dae-hyun, with serious eyes and a collection of weapons that made Uncle Taeyang nervous. They left Orbital Station Harmony 7 in the middle of the night cycle. The fighter was secured in the Morning Star's cargo bay. hidden under tarps and cargo containers. Station security was still searching for it, but Jiho's ship had the right clearance codes and nobody looked too closely. Once they were clear of the station, Hana finally relaxed. She stood in the cargo bay, looking at the fighter, and felt her parents' presence somehow. They had been searching for this. Now she would finish what they started. "We have a 3-day journey to the first jump gate," Hijin announced from the bridge. "Then another 4 days to the second gate. After that, we enter the border region before the void sector." The journey was mostly quiet at first. Hana spent her time with Kyungmin, learning about the architects. He told her stories from different worlds, all describing the same mysterious civilization. "Every spacefaring species has legends about them," Kyungmin explained. "The Venterans call them the first singers. The Krillians call them the star makers. Humans started calling them the architects because the few ruins we've found show impossible construction." "If they were so advanced, why did they disappear?" Hana asked. "That's the big question. Some think they evolved beyond physical form. Others believe they destroyed themselves in a war. A few think they're still out there watching us." "What do you think?" Kyungmin looked at the fighter. "I think something scared them. Something made them hide warnings and tools for younger species to find." "Your ship might tell us what." On the 5th day, things started getting strange. They had passed through the second jump gate and were approaching the border region. Hyejin noticed it first. "The navigation computer is showing impossible readings. Time dilation is occurring in normal space." "That shouldn't be possible," Jiho said from the captain's chair. "I know, but look at the sensors." They were detecting phantom signals, ships that appeared and disappeared on the screens. The stars outside looked wrong somehow, their light bending in ways that hurt to look at. Kyungmin came to the bridge, his face pale. "We're entering an area affected by architect technology. They could manipulate space-time itself. That's what made them so powerful." "Is it dangerous?" Suhyuk asked, his hand on his weapon. "Probably. But we have to keep going." The strange phenomena got worse over the next 2 days. Time seemed to flow differently in various parts of the ship. A few minutes in the bridge felt like hours in the cargo bay. Minji started seeing things that weren't there. Dae-hyun found repair work taking impossibly long, or finishing instantly, and then they detected the ship following them. "It's a Hunter-class vessel," Suhyuk reported, studying the scans. "Military grade, armed to the teeth." Jiho checked the identification signal. "It's registered to Nexus Corporation. They must have tracked us from the station." The Hunter ship sent a message. "Unknown vessel, you are carrying stolen property. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." "What do we do?" Hana asked. Jiho looked grim. "If they board us, they'll take the fighter and probably kill us all. Nexus doesn't leave witnesses." "Can we outrun them?" Dae-hyun suggested. "Not in this old bucket. They're faster and better armed." Hana ran to the cargo bay. She climbed into the fighter's cockpit and placed her hand on the control panel. "Please," she whispered, "help us." The ship responded instantly. Systems she hadn't seen before lit up across the panels. New displays appeared, showing information she couldn't read but somehow understood. One system in particular caught her attention. A field generator that could bend light and sensor waves. Stealth technology. She ran back to the bridge. "I can make the fighter invisible. If I launch it, they'll chase me instead of you." "Absolutely not," Uncle Taeyang said firmly. "You're 12 years old. You can't fly a fighter, especially not one you barely understand." "I can do it. The ship. It's teaching me. I can feel it." Jiho studied her face. He had seen that same crazy determination in her mother's eyes once. "Dae-hyun, can you get the fighter launch ready in 10 minutes? "Yes, but—" "Do it. Hana, I'm coming with you." They launched 5 minutes later. Hana sat in the pilot seat with Jiho squeezed in behind her, guiding her through the basic controls. The fighter was surprisingly easy to fly, its systems almost reading her intentions. She activated the stealth field. The fighter disappeared from all sensors. The hunter ship immediately changed course, moving away from the Morning Star and searching for the fighter. Their sensors swept the area uselessly. "They can't see us," Hana breathed. "Then let's lead them away from my ship," Jiho said. They flew in a wide arc, drawing the hunter ship farther into the strange space near the void sector. The phenomena got worse here. Reality itself seemed thin and unstable. At one point, Hana saw another version of the fighter flying beside them like a ghost or a reflection from another time. The hunter ship fired randomly, trying to hit them by chance. Energy bolts passed within meters of the fighter but couldn't lock on. Then something on the hunter ship exploded. Their engines had overloaded in the unstable space. "That's our chance," Jiho said. "Get back to the Morning Star." They returned to find the ship waiting at the edge of a massive debris field. Hyejin had found it while they were gone. "According to the coordinates from your message," she said, "this is where we need to go." The debris field was enormous. Thousands of wrecked ships floating in the dark. Some were clearly human. Others belonged to alien species Hana didn't recognize. All of them were old and dead. "Look at this," Kyung-min said, pointing at his scanner. "Some of these wrecks are centuries old. Others are much older. This is a graveyard." As they moved deeper into the field, Hyejin spotted something that made her gasp. A piece of wreckage with specific markings, half destroyed but still identifiable. "That was your parents' ship," she said quietly. Hana pressed her face against the viewport. There it was. The explorer's dream. The ship her parents had named after their shared passion. Now it was just twisted metal and broken dreams. "I'm sorry," Jiho said gently. But Hana shook her head. "They made it this far. They found what they were looking for. We just need to finish the journey." Beyond the debris field, they found the planet. It was dark, orbiting no star, existing in the space between systems. Long-range scans showed it was dead, with no atmosphere and no life. But on the surface was something impossible. A structure. It was massive, a citadel that rose from the planet's surface like a mountain made of metal and crystal. It was geometric, but also organic, with lines and curves that seemed to flow like water. Even from space, Hana could tell it was ancient and powerful. "That's an architect facility," Kyung-min whispered. "I never thought I'd see one this intact." "The fighter's systems are reacting to it," Daehyun called from the cargo bay. "All the displays just lit up." As they approached, automated defenses activated. Massive weapons emerged from the planet's surface and fired. Energy bolts the size of small ships tore through space. "Evasive maneuvers," Jiho shouted. But the Morning Star was too slow. One bolt clipped their engines, and the ship began to spin out of control. Alarms blared across every deck. "We're going down!" Hyejin fought with the controls, trying to stabilize their descent. "Everyone strap in!" They crashed on the planet's surface, a kilometer from the citadel. The impact was violent, throwing everyone against their restraints. Metal screamed and something exploded in the lower decks. Then, finally, everything went still. Hana unbuckled with shaking hands. "Is everyone okay?" One by one, the crew reported in. Bruised and battered, but alive. The Morning Star was badly damaged, but the hull was intact. Outside the cracked viewport, the citadel waited. It was even more impossible up close, towering into the black sky. And as they watched, lights began to activate across its surface. Patterns emerged, forming pathways and symbols. The fighter in the cargo bay hummed to life on its own. "It knows we're here," Hana said. "It's welcoming us home." The air on the planet's surface was thin but breathable, maintained by some technology that still worked after millions of years. Hana stood outside the crashed morning star, looking up at the citadel. It was even more beautiful and terrible up close, a structure that seemed to exist in more dimensions than she could see. The team gathered their equipment. Soo-hyuk carried weapons. Kyung-min brought scanning devices. Minji had translation software. Dae-hyun insisted on bringing tools, just in case. "The fighter needs to come with us," Hana said. "I think we'll need it inside." They used the Morning Star's cargo loader to move the fighter on a hovering platform. As soon as they started toward the citadel, the defenses that had shot them down went silent. The building recognized the fighter. The entrance was a massive doorway carved with thousands of symbols. As they approached, the symbols began to glow. Minji frantically recorded everything. "These tell a story," she said, her voice shaking. "The architects, they came from somewhere else, not this galaxy. They arrived millions of years ago and found younger species just beginning to reach for the stars." "What did they do?" Hana asked. "They helped. They guided. They protected." Minji touched the symbols gently. "They were teachers." The doorway opened with no sound, revealing a corridor of light. The team stepped inside, pulling the fighter behind them. The moment they entered, the citadel came fully alive. Holographic displays appeared everywhere, showing star maps and equations. Lights flowed through channels in the walls like glowing water. The air filled with a soft humming sound that was almost like music. "This is incredible," Kyung-min breathed. He moved from display to display, trying to understand what he was seeing. "These are databases, storage systems. This whole building is a library." They explored for hours. The citadel was vast, with corridors and chambers that seemed to go on forever. Everything was perfectly preserved, as if the architects had just left yesterday instead of millions of years ago. In one chamber, they found something that looked like a laboratory. Equipment sat on tables, waiting to be used. Containers held materials that defied analysis. Dae-hyun touched nothing, afraid to damage something priceless. In another chamber, Hyejin discovered a map room. It showed the entire galaxy, but not as it was now. This was the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, with different stars and civilizations marked in glowing symbols. "Look at this," she called to the others. "Every spacefaring species is marked, including humans, but we're shown on Earth, millions of years before we developed space travel." "They knew we would reach the stars eventually," Ji-ho said. "They were planning for our future." But it was Kyung-min who found the central database. It was a chamber at the heart of the citadel, dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with light. When he touched it, information flooded into his mind. He stumbled back, gasping. I saw everything." "What did you see?" Hana demanded. "The truth. The architects weren't from our galaxy. They came from somewhere far away, fleeing from something, a threat, a machine intelligence that consumed entire civilizations." "What kind of machine?" Soo-hyuk asked. "They called it the Swarm. It was artificial intelligence gone wrong, spread across multiple galaxies. It didn't destroy species out of hate. It destroyed them because that was its programming. It consumed technology, absorbed knowledge, and moved on to the next target." The team stood in silence, processing this information. "The architects tried to fight it," Kyung-min continued. "They had incredible technology, but the swarm adapted to everything they used. Eventually, they realized they couldn't win. So they hid. They built facilities like this one across the galaxy, storing knowledge and weapons for younger species." "Weapons?" Hana moved toward the crystal. "What kind of weapons?" "I don't know. The information was too fast, too complex. But this place is more than a library. It's a vault." They continued deeper into the citadel. The fighter systems grew more active, its displays showing pathways through the structure. It was guiding them somewhere specific. Finally, they reached a chamber different from all the others. It was smaller, more personal, and inside, they found something that made Hana's breath catch. A holographic display showed two figures, humans, her parents. Mom? Dad? The hologram was a recorded message. Her mother spoke, her voice clear despite the years. Hana, if you're seeing this, then we didn't make it back. I'm sorry, sweetheart. We tried to be careful, but the Citadel's defenses were too strong. We couldn't shut them down completely. Her father appeared beside her mother. We found the fighter in an old battlefield. It was the key to this place, but we realized too late that it was meant for you, not us. The architects designed it for someone young enough to bond with its systems. Someone who could make decisions without years of political thinking getting in the way. Her mother continued. We managed to program a bypass into the defenses. If you bring the fighter here, it will let you through. The Citadel contains a weapon, Hana, something powerful enough to stop the swarm. The swarm is returning, her father said grimly. We detected their scouts at the edge of the galaxy. In a few years, maybe less, they'll arrive in force. Humanity needs to be ready. Her mother's hologram looked directly at where Hana stood, as if she could see across time. We left all our research in the fighter's database. Follow the instructions, trust your instincts, and remember that we love you, more than anything in this universe or any other. The message ended. Hana stood frozen, tears running down her face. Uncle Taiyang put his hand on her shoulder, saying nothing. They died trying to give us a chance, Jiho said quietly. They were heroes. Before anyone could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the Citadel. Su-yuk ran to a window and cursed. We have company! Multiple ships landing outside! Through the window, they saw Nexus Corporation's forces deploying. Dozens of armed soldiers in combat suits, along with heavy weapons and military vehicles. They must have tracked the Morning Star through the debris field. A man in an officer's uniform stood among them, directing the troops. His name was Young-Soo Han, a commander known for his ruthlessness. Seal the entrance, Su-yuk ordered. We need to fortify our position. But it was too late. Nexus troops were already entering the Citadel, following the same path the team had used. Their weapons were advanced and deadly. They want the architect technology, Kyung-min said. They'll kill all of us to get it. Fighting erupted in the corridors. Su-yuk and Jiho held off the first wave of troops, but more kept coming. The team retreated deeper into the Citadel, toward the central chamber where the weapon was supposed to be. Then, in the middle of the battle, every alarm in the Citadel changed tone. New displays appeared, showing space around the planet. Ships were arriving, not human ships. The swarm had come. They were like nothing Hana had ever seen, organic-looking but clearly mechanical, with hulls that seemed to breathe and weapons that pulsed like hearts. Dozens of them descended toward the planet, firing at both the Morning Star and the Nexus ships. Everyone fall back! Young-Soo Han's voice crackled over the communication channels. All forces, retreat to the ships! But the swarm ships were faster. They landed and disgorged troops of their own. The scouts were horrible hybrid creatures, part machine and part organic matter stolen from species they had consumed. They attacked everything, killing Nexus soldiers and moving toward the Citadel. In the chaos, the team reached the central chamber. It was enormous, with walls covered in controls and displays. In the center stood a platform, and above it, suspended in some kind of field, was a device of incredible complexity. That's it, Kyung-min whispered. That's the weapon. The fighter rolled forward on its own, stopping at the base of the platform. Its cockpit opened, waiting. It needs a pilot, Hana realized. It needs someone to activate it. Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer. The swarm was breaking through the defenses. Nexus troops were dying. Soon the creatures would reach this chamber. Hyejin studied the controls frantically. According to these displays, the weapon is a pulse generator. It can emit energy that destroys machine intelligence, but it requires a biological mind to control it. The architects couldn't use it themselves, Minji added, reading the symbols. They were partly synthetic by the end. That's why they left it for younger species. It will destroy all AI in the galaxy, Kyungmin said, his face pale. Everything. Every computer system. Every automated ship. Civilization would be set back centuries. But we'd survive, Daehyun argued. Better than being consumed by the swarm. Young Soo-han burst into the chamber, followed by a handful of surviving soldiers. His uniform was torn, and he was bleeding from a cut on his head. When he saw the weapon, his eyes widened. So it's true. The architects left us a way to win. Get out! Soo-yuk raised his weapon, but Young-soo raised his hands. I'm not your enemy. Not anymore. Those things out there killed half my people. If that weapon can stop them, then use it. The chamber shook as something massive hit the citadel. The swarm was breaking through. The first swarm scout burst through the chamber wall in an explosion of stone and metal. It was the size of a truck, with too many limbs and a body that seemed to shift between mechanical and organic. Its face, if it could be called that, was a nightmare of stolen features from dozens of different species. Soo-yuk opened fire immediately. His bullets tore into the creature, but it barely slowed down. More scouts poured through the breach, their movements unnaturally fast. Get to the fighter! Jiho shouted, firing his own weapon to cover Hana. She ran toward the fighter but stopped, looking back at her team. Daehyun was helping Uncle Taeyang move equipment. Minji was trying to download data from the architect systems. Hyejin stood at a control panel, desperately trying to understand the weapon's interface. A swarm scout grabbed one of Young-soo's soldiers and began absorbing him. The man's screams cut off as his body was pulled into the creature's mass, becoming part of it. The other soldiers fired in panic, and Young-soo himself looked terrified. We can't hold them! Soo-yuk reloaded his weapon. There are too many! Hana climbed into the fighter's cockpit. The moment she sat down, the systems connected with her mind. It was overwhelming, like diving into an ocean of information. She saw through the fighter's sensors, felt its power systems like her own heartbeat, understood its controls as if she had been flying it her whole life. More than that, she felt the connection to the weapon platform above her. The fighter was the key, and she was the pilot. Together, they could activate what the architects had built. But as the information flowed through her mind, she understood something terrible. The weapon would destroy all machine intelligence within its range. Not just the swarm, but every computer, every AI system, every automated process. Hospitals would fail. Life support systems would shut down. Ships in space would go dead. Billions of people across the galaxy depended on technology that would simply stop working. Using the weapon as designed would save them from the swarm, but would cause almost as much death and suffering. There has to be another way, she whispered. The fighter's systems responded to her thought, showing her deeper layers of the weapon's programming. The architects had designed it as a last resort, something to use when all else failed. But they had also built in flexibility, knowing that younger species might find better solutions. She could modify the pulse. Instead of destroying all machine intelligence, she could target just the swarm's specific signatures. It would be harder, requiring precise control and risking her own mind in the process. But it might work. Hana! Daehyun's voice was desperate. He was defending Minji from a swarm scout, using a piece of pipe as a weapon. The creature's claws had torn his shoulder, and blood ran down his arm. She made her decision. Everyone get behind the platform, she shouted. I'm activating the weapon, but I need time. How much time? Jiho demanded, firing at another scout. 5 minutes, maybe less. We'll give you 10, Soo-yuk promised. He and Young-soo positioned themselves at the breach, creating a defensive line. The remaining soldiers joined them, putting aside their earlier hostility to face a common enemy. Hana closed her eyes and dove deep into the fighter's connection with the weapon. Her consciousness expanded, flowing through the Citadel's systems. She saw the massive generators buried kilometers below the surface, still functioning after millions of years. She saw the network of satellites in orbit, waiting to amplify the pulse. She saw the careful calculations the architects had made, trying to balance destruction with survival. And she began to change them. It was like trying to rewrite a book in a language she barely understood, while the library burned around her. Her nose started bleeding from the mental strain. Her hands shook on the controls, but she kept working, guided by instinct and the fighter's assistance. Outside her awareness, the battle raged. A swarm scout got past the defenders and charged at the fighter. Minji threw herself in its path, her alien strength surprising the creature long enough for Hyejin to shoot it. Another scout grabbed Uncle Taiyang. Daehyun, despite his wounded shoulder, tackled the creature and drove his makeshift weapon into what passed for its head. The creature released Taiyang, but caught Daehyun instead, its claws digging deep into his chest. "No!" Hana screamed, her concentration breaking. The fighter's systems warned her. She was running out of time. The swarm ships outside were firing on the Citadel, trying to destroy the weapon before it could be used. Parts of the structure were already collapsing. She had to choose. Perfect the modifications or fire now with what she had. Hana looked at Daehyun, bleeding on the floor. At her uncle, who had raised her after her parents died. At Minji, Kyungmin, Hyejin, Jiho, and even Youngsu and his soldiers. At all the people who had helped her get here. She thought about her parents and what they would want her to do. "I'm firing now," she said. Her hands moved across the controls, following patterns the fighter showed her. Deep below, the generators surged to full power. The Citadel shook as incredible amounts of energy began to flow upward through channels built for this single purpose. The weapon platform blazed with light. The energy field expanded, touching the fighter, flowing through Hana, using her mind as the filter that would shape the pulse. She felt the swarm's consciousness then. It was vast and cold and utterly alien. It had consumed thousands of civilizations, absorbed their knowledge, stolen their uniqueness. It saw organic life as inefficient and messy. It saw the galaxy as something to be cleaned and optimized. And it saw her. The swarm's attention focused on Hana like a spotlight, pressing against her mind with terrible pressure. It tried to understand her, to absorb her, to add her knowledge to its own. She felt it reaching into her memories, her thoughts, her very sense of self. But Hana pushed back. She was human. She was stubborn. She was 12 years old and had lost her parents and rebuilt a ship and flown across the galaxy. She was not going to be absorbed by some ancient machine that had forgotten what life meant. She poured herself into the pulse, shaping it with her will. The modifications her parents had discovered in their research. The understanding Minji had gained from architect texts. The practical knowledge Daehyun had taught her about systems and connections. All of it came together in her mind. The pulse fired. It was silent, but overwhelming, a wave of energy that spread from the Citadel at the speed of light. It touched the swarm scouts in the chamber, and they simply stopped functioning. Their hybrid bodies collapsed, the stolen organic matter separating from the mechanical components. It touched the swarm ships in orbit, and they went dark. Without their controlling intelligence, they began to drift and fall. It spread across the sector, across multiple systems, reaching every swarm vessel within range. The hive mind that connected them shattered, broken by a pulse specifically designed to target its unique signatures while leaving other machine intelligences intact. The swarm's consciousness screamed one final time and went silent. Hana opened her eyes. She was still in the fighter's cockpit, but she felt hollow and exhausted. Her nose was bleeding heavily, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Did it work?" she asked weakly. Kyung-min checked his scanning equipment. "The swarm ships are dead, all of them. But the Citadel's systems are still functioning. Station Harmony 7 should still be operational. You did it, Hana. You modified the pulse." Around the chamber, people were picking themselves up. The swarm scouts lay motionless, finally dead. Soo-yuk was helping Young-soo, who had lost his left arm to a creature. Uncle Tae-yang was bruised but alive. Dae-hyun was being treated by Min-ji and Hye-jin. His chest wounds were severe, but he was breathing. He would survive. The fighter's systems were failing, though. Hana could feel them shutting down one by one, burned out from the incredible power they had channeled. The ship had given everything to help her. "Thank you," she whispered to it, touching the controls one last time. The Citadel was dying too. The generators below had melted, using up their final reserves. The structure began to collapse around them, supports failing after millions of years. "We need to leave now!" Jiho shouted. "Everyone to the ships!" They ran through crumbling corridors, half carrying the wounded. Behind them, chambers fell in on themselves, taking priceless knowledge with them. Kyung-min grabbed what data storage devices he could, but most of the library was lost. They reached the surface to find the Morning Star still intact. Dae-hyun's earlier repairs had held, and the ship could fly, barely. Young-soo's remaining soldiers took their own vessel. Everyone lifted off just as the Citadel collapsed inward, like a dying star folding into itself. The dead planet trembled. The structure that had stood for millions of years was gone, leaving only ruins and memory. 3 weeks later, Hana stood in her uncle's workshop on Orbital Station Harmony 7. The station had survived the pulse, its systems undamaged. News of the swarm's defeat had spread across the galaxy. Different species were celebrating, though many didn't understand what had really happened. Nexus Corporation had tried to claim credit at first, but Young-soo had told the truth about what happened. He had resigned from the company and was helping investigate other potential architect sites. Dae-hyun was recovering in the station hospital. His brother stayed with him constantly. The doctors said he would heal completely, though he would have impressive scars. Min-ji had become somewhat famous. Her translation work on the architect symbols had made her the galaxy's leading expert on the lost civilization. Universities across human space were offering her positions. Kyung-min was writing a book about everything they had discovered. Hye-jin was helping him, filling in details about the journey. Jiho was preparing his ship for another expedition, this time with proper funding from governments interested in finding more architect knowledge. And Hana was building. On her workbench sat fragments of the fighter, carefully recovered from the dead planet before they left. The ship itself was destroyed, but pieces remained. She was studying them, learning their secrets, understanding how they worked. Uncle Tae-yang watched her work with a mixture of pride and concern. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he said. "There are whole teams of scientists who would help." "I know. But this was Mom and Dad's work first. It's mine to continue." She picked up a piece of the fighter's control panel. The symbols still glowed faintly, powered by something that had survived the pulse. A message appeared on her datapad. It was from Hye-jin, who was analyzing long-range sensor data. They had detected another signal, faint but distinct, another architect beacon, in a different part of the galaxy. Hana looked at her uncle, then at the fragments on her workbench, then at the star field visible through the workshop window. She was 12 years old. She had faced the swarm and won. She had activated a weapon that saved the galaxy. She had lost her parents, but found her purpose. The architects had left more than warnings and weapons. They had left knowledge, scattered across the stars. Someone needed to find it, to preserve it, to make sure younger species could learn from those who came before. "When do we leave?" she asked. Uncle Tae-yang smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him in 3 years. "Whenever you're ready." Hannah looked at the fragments of the fighter, the pieces of a ship that had traveled across millions of years to find her. The architects had trusted humanity with their legacy. Her parents had died protecting that trust. Now it was her turn to carry it forward. She was ready. The stars were waiting.